You are listening to PastThink.com audiobook. Please like and subscribe, thank you. 45. At the Three Pure Ones Abbey the great sage leaves his name. At the Cart-Slow Kingdom the Monkey King shows his power. We now tell you about the great sage Sun, who used his left hand to give Sha Monk a pinch, and his right to give Zhu 8 rules a pinch. Immediately understanding what he meant, the two of them fell silent, and sat with lowered faces on their high seats. They allowed those Taoists to examine them back and front with uplifted lamps and torches, but the three of them seemed no more than idols made of clay and adorned with gold. There are no thieves around, said the Tiger Strength Immortal, but then, why are all the offerings eaten? It definitely looks as if humans have eaten them, said the Deer Strength Immortal. Look how the fruits are skinned and their stones spat out. Why is it that we don't see any human form? Don't be too suspicious, elder brothers, said the Goat Strength Immortal. I think that our piety and sincerity of reciting scriptures and saying prayers here night and day, all in the name of the court, must have aroused the celestial worthies. The venerable fathers of the Three Pure Ones, I suppose, must have descended to earth and consumed these offerings. Why don't we take advantage of the fact that their holy train and crane carriages are still here, and make supplication to the celestial worthies? We should beg for some golden elixir and holy water, with which we may present His Majesty. Wouldn't his long life and perpetual youth be in fact our merit? You are right, said the Tiger Strength Immortal. Disciples, start the music and recite the scriptures. Bring us our ritual robes. Let me tread the stars to make our supplication. Those little Taoists all obeyed and lined themselves up on both sides. At the sound of the gong, they all recited in unison the scroll of true scriptures of the Yellow Court. After having put on his ritual robe, the Tiger Strength Immortal held high his jade tablet, and began to kick up the dust with dancing. Intermittently he would fall to the ground and prostrate himself. Then he intoned this petition. In fear and dread, we bow most humbly. To stir up our faith, we seek purity. Vile priests we quell. To honor the way, this hall we build. The king to obey. Dragon flags we raise, and offerings display. Torches by night, incense by day. One thought sincere doth heaven sway. Chariots divine, now come to stay. Grant unto us some elixir and holy water, which we may give to His Majesty, that he may gain longevity. When 8 Rules heard these words, he was filled with apprehension. This is our fault. We've eaten the goods and should be on our way. Now, how shall we answer such supplication? Pilgrim gave him another pinch, before suddenly opening his mouth and speaking out loud, You immortals of a younger generation, please stop your recitation. We have just returned from the festival of immortal peaches, and we have not brought along any golden elixir or holy water. In another day we shall come to bestow them on you. When those Taoists, old and young, heard that the image had actually spoken, every one of them trembled violently till even their garments quaked. O fathers, they cried, the living celestial worthies have descended to earth. We must not let them go. We must insist on their giving us some sort of magic formula for eternal youth. Then the Deer Strength Immortal went forward also to prostrate himself and intone this supplication. Our heads to the dust, we pray earnestly. Your subjects submit to the Pure Ones 3. Since we came here, the way was set free. The king is pleased to seek longevity. This heavenly mass chants scriptures nightly. We thank the celestial worthies for revealing their presence holy. Oh, hear our prayers. We seek your glory. Do leave some holy water behind, that your disciples long life may find. Sha Monk gave Pilgrim a pinch and whispered fiercely, elder brother. They are at it again. Just listen to the prayer. All right, said Pilgrim, let's give them something. Where could we find it, muttered 8 Rules. Just watch me, said Pilgrim, and when you see that I have it, you'll have it too. After those Taoists had finished their music and their prayers, Pilgrim again spoke out loud, you immortals of a younger generation, there's no need for your bowing and praying any longer. I am rather reluctant to leave you some holy water, but I fear then that our posterity will die out. If I gave you some, however, it would seem to be too easy a boon. When those Taoists heard these words, they all prostrated themselves and kowtowed. We beseech the celestial worthies to have regard for the reverence of your disciples, they cried, and we beg you to leave us some. We shall proclaim far and near the way and virtue. We shall memorialize to the king to give added honors to the gate of mystery. In that case, said Pilgrim, bring us some vessels. The Taoists all touched their heads to the ground to give thanks. Being the greediest, the Tiger Strength Immortal hauled in a huge cistern, and placed it in the hall. The Dew Strength Immortal fetched an earthenware garden vase, and put it on top of the offering table. The Goat Strength Immortal pulled out the flowers from a flower pot, and placed it in the middle of the other 2 vessels. Then Pilgrim said to them, now leave the hall and close the shutters, so that the heavenly mysteries will not be seen by profane eyes. We shall leave you some holy water. The Taoists retreated from the hall, and closed the doors, after which they all prostrated themselves before the vermilion steps. Pilgrim stood up at once and, lifting up his tiger skin kilt, filled the flower pot with his stinking urine. Delighted by what he saw, Zhu 8 Rules said, elder brother, you and I have been brothers these few years, but we have never had fun like this before. Since I gorged myself just now, I have been feeling the urge to do this. Lifting up his clothes, our idiot let loose such a torrent that it sounded as if the Luliang Cascade One had crashed onto some wooden boards. He pissed till he filled the whole garden vase. Sha Monk, too, left behind half a cistern. They then straightened their clothes and resumed their seats solemnly before they called out, little ones, receive your holy water. Pushing open the shutters, those Taoists kowtowed repeatedly to give thanks. They carried the cistern out first, and then they poured the contents of the vase and the pot into the bigger vessel, mixing the liquids together. Disciples, said the Tiger Strength Immortal, bring me a cup so that I can have a taste. A young Taoist immediately fetched a teacup and handed it to the old Taoist. After bailing out a cup of it and gulping down a huge mouthful, the old Taoist kept wiping his mouth and puckering his lips. Elder brother, said the Deer Strength Immortal, is it good? Not very good, said the old Taoist, his lips still pouted, the flavor is quite potent. Let me try it also, said the Goat Strength Immortal, and he too downed a mouthful. Immediately he said, it smells somewhat like hog urine. Sitting high above them and hearing this remark, Pilgrim knew that he could no longer fool them. He thought to himself, I might as well display my abilities and leave them our names too. He cried out in a loud voice. O Taoists, Taoists! You are so silly. Which 3 pure ones would be so worldly? Let our true names be told most clearly. Monks of the great Tang, go west by decree. We come to your place this fine night carefree. Your offerings eaten, we sit and play. Your bows and greetings, how could we repay? That was no holy water you drank. 'Twas only the urine we pissed that stank. The moment the Taoists heard this, they barred the door. Picking up pitchforks, rakes, brooms, tiles, rocks, and whatever else they could put their hands on, they sent these hurtling inside the main hall to attack the impostors. Dear Pilgrim, using his left hand to catch hold of Sha Monk, and his right to take hold of 8 Rules, he crashed out of the door and mounted the cloudy luminosity to go straight back to the Wisdom Depth Monastery. When they arrived at the abbot's residence, they dared not disturb their master. Each went to bed quietly and slept until the 3rd quarter of the 5th watch. At that time, of course, the king began to hold his morning court, where 2 rows of civil and military officials, some 400 of them, stood at attention. You see bright lamps and torches midst purple gauze. Fragrant clouds rising from treasure tripods. As soon as Tripitaka Tang woke up, he said, "Disciples, help me to go and have our travel rescript certified." Rising quickly, Pilgrim, Sha Monk, and 8 rules slipped on their clothes and stood to one side to wait on their master. They said, "Let it be known to our master that this king truly believes only the Taoists and is eager to exalt the Way and to exterminate the Buddhists. We fear that any ill-spoken word may cause him to refuse to certify our rescript. Let us therefore accompany master to enter the court." Highly pleased, the Tang monk draped the brocaded cassock on himself, while Pilgrim took out the travel rescript. Wu Jing was told to hold the alms bowl, and Wu Ning to take up the priestly staff. The luggage and the horse were placed in the care of the monks of the Wisdom Depth Monastery. They went before the 5 Phoenix Tower, and saluted the custodian of the Yellow Gate. Having identified themselves, they declared that they were scripture pilgrims from the Great Tang in the land of the East, who wished to have their travel rescript certified, and would therefore like the custodian to announce their arrival. The official of the gate went at once into court and prostrated himself before the golden steps to memorialize to the king, saying, "There are 4 Buddhist monks outside who claim that they are scripture pilgrims from the Great Tang in the land of the East. They wish to have their travel rescript certified, and they now await your majesty's decree before the 5 Phoenix Tower." When the king heard this, he said, "These monks have nowhere to court death, and, of all places, they have to do it here. Why didn't our constables arrest them at once and bring them here?" A grand preceptor before the throne stepped forward and said, "The Great Tang in the land of the East is located in the South Jambudvipa continent. It's the great nation of China, some 10,000 miles from here. As the way is infested with monsters and fiends, these monks must have considerable magic powers, or they would not dare undertake this westward journey. I implore your majesty to invite them in and certify their rescript so that they may proceed, for the sake of the fact that they are the distant monks from China, and for the sake of not destroying any goodly affinity." The king gave his consent and summoned the Tang monk and his followers before the Hall of Golden Chimes. After master and disciples arrived before the steps, they presented the rescript to the king. The king opened the document and was about to read it, when the custodian of the Yellow Gate appeared to announce, "The 3 preceptors of state have arrived." The king was so flustered that he put away the rescript hurriedly and left the dragon seat. After having ordered his attendants to set out some embroidered cushions, he bent his body to receive his visitors. When Tripitaka and his followers turned around to look, they saw those 3 great immortals swagger in, followed by a young acolyte with 2 tousled pigtails. Not daring even to lift their eyes, the 2 rows of officials all bowed deeply as they walked by. After they ascended the Hall of Golden Chimes, they did not even bother to salute the king. "State preceptors," said the king, "we have not invited you. How is it that you are pleased to visit us today?" "We have something to tell you," said one of the old Taoists, "and that's why we're here." "Those 4 monks down there, where do they come from?" The king said, "They were sent by the Great Tang in the land of the East to fetch scriptures, and they presented themselves here to have their travel rescript certified." Clapping their hands together, the 3 Taoists burst out laughing and said, "We thought they had fled. So they are still here." Somewhat startled, the king said, "What do you mean, preceptors?" "When we first heard of their arrival, we wanted to arrest them and send them to serve you, had not our grand preceptor on duty intervened and presented a most reasonable memorial. Since we had regard for the fact that they had traveled a great distance, and since we did not wish to destroy our goodly affinity with China, we summoned them in here to verify their rescript. We did not expect you to raise any question about them. Could it be that they have offended you in some way?" "Your Majesty wouldn't know about this," said one of the Taoists, chuckling. "Hardly had they arrived yesterday, when they slew 2 of our disciples outside the eastern gate. The 500 Buddhist prisoners were all released and the cart was smashed to pieces. As if that weren't enough, they sneaked into our temple last night, vandalized the holy images of the 3 pure ones, and devoured all the imperial offerings. We were fooled by them at first, thinking that the celestial worthies had descended to earth. We therefore even asked them to give us some golden elixir and holy water with which we might present your majesty, so that you would be blessed with eternal youth. We hardly expected that they would trick us by leaving us their urine. We found out all right, after each of us had tasted a mouthful. Just when we were about to seize them, they managed to escape. We didn't think that they would dare remain here today. As the proverb says, the road for fated enemies is narrow indeed. When the king heard this, he became so irate that he would have had the 4 priests executed at once. Pressing his palms together, the great sage Sun cried out in a loud voice, saying, "Your Majesty, let your thunder-like wrath subside for the moment, and permit this monk to present his memorial." "You offended the state preceptors," said the king. "Do you dare imply that their words might be erroneous?" Pilgrim said, "He claimed that yesterday we slaughtered 2 of his disciples outside the city. But who could be a witness? Even if we were to confess to this crime, and that would be a gross injustice, only 2 of us need be asked to pay with our lives, and 2 of us should be released so that we might proceed to acquire the scriptures." He claimed further that we wrecked their cart and released their Buddhist prisoners. Again, there is no witness, and moreover, this is hardly a mortal offense, and only one of us should be punished for this if it were true. Finally, he charged us with vandalizing the images of the 3 pure ones and causing disturbance in their temple. "This is clearly a trap they set for us." "How could you say that it's a trap?" asked the king. "We monks are from the land of the East," said Pilgrim, "and we've just arrived in this region. We can't even tell one street from another. How could we know about the affairs of their temple, and at night no less? If we could leave them our urine, they should have been able to arrest us right then and there. Why did they wait until this morning to accuse us? In this whole wide world, there are countless people who use false identities. How could they know for certain that we are guilty? I beg your Majesty to withhold your anger, and make a thorough investigation." The king, after all, had always been rather muddle-headed. When he heard this lengthy speech by Pilgrim, he became more confused than ever. Just then, the custodian of the Yellow Gate again came to make this announcement: "Your Majesty, there are outside the gate many village elders who await your summons." "For what reason?" asked the king. He ordered them brought in, and 30 or 40 village elders came before the hall. "Your Majesty," they said as they kowtowed, "there has been no rain this year for the entire spring, and we fear that there will be a famine if it remains dry like this through summer. We have come especially to request that one of the Holy Fathers, the preceptors of state, pray for sweet rain that will succor the entire population." The king said, "Let the village elders withdraw. Rain will be forthcoming." The village elders gave thanks and left. Then the king said, "You, priests of the Tang court, why do you think that we honor the Tao and seek to destroy Buddhism?" It was because in years past, the monks of this dynasty attempted to pray for rain, and they could not produce even a single drop. It was our good fortune that these preceptors of state descended from heaven, and saved us from our bitter affliction. Now all of you have offended the preceptors of state no sooner than you arrived from a great distance, and you should be condemned. We shall pardon you for the moment, however, and ask whether you dare to have a rain-making competition with our preceptors. If your prayers could bring us the rain to assuage the needs of the people, we would pardon you, certify your rescript, and permit you to journey to the west. If you fail in your competition, and no rain comes, all of you will be taken to the block and beheaded publicly." With a laugh, Pilgrim said, "This little priest has some knowledge of prayers too." When the king heard this, he at once asked for an altar to be built. Meanwhile, he also gave the command that his carriage be brought out. "We want personally to ascend the 5 Phoenix Tower to watch," he said. Many officials followed the carriage up the tower, and the king took his seat. Tripitaka Tang, followed by Pilgrim, Sha Monk, and 8 rules, stood at attention down below, while the 3 Taoists also accompanied the king and took their seats on the tower. In a little while, an official came riding with the report, "The altar is ready. Let one of the father preceptors of state ascend it." Bowing with his hands folded before him, the tiger strength immortal took leave of the king and walked down the tower. "Sir," said Pilgrim, barring his way, "where are you going?" To ascend the altar and pray for rain, said the great immortal. You do have a sense of self-importance, said Pilgrim, absolutely unwilling to defer to us monks who have come from a great distance. All right. As the proverb says, even a strong dragon is no match for a local worm. But if the master insists on proceeding first, then he must make a statement first before the king. What statement? Asked the great immortal. Pilgrim said, both you and I are supposed to ascend the altar to pray for rain. When it comes, how could anyone tell whether it's your rain or mine? Who could tell whose merit it is? When the king above them heard this, he was secretly pleased and said, the words of this little priest are quite gutsy. When Sha Monk heard this, he said to himself, smiling, you don't know that his stomach's full of gutsiness. He hasn't shown much of it yet. The great immortal said, there's no need for me to make any statement. His Majesty is quite familiar with what I am about to do. He may know it, said Pilgrim, but I am a monk who came from a distant region. I have never met you and I'm not familiar with what you are about to do. I don't want us to end up accusing each other later, for that wouldn't be good business. We must settle this first before we act. All right, said the great immortal, when I ascend the altar, I shall use my ritual tablet as a sign. When I bang it loudly on the table once, wind will come, the second time, clouds will gather, the third time, there will be lightning and thunder, the fourth time, rain will come, and finally the fifth time, rain will stop and clouds will disperse. Marvelous, said Pilgrim, laughing. I have never seen this before. Please go. Please go. With great strides, the great immortal walked forward, followed by Tripitaka and the rest. As they approached the altar, they saw that it was a platform about 30 feet tall. On all sides were flown banners with the names of the 28 constellations written on them. There was a table on top of the altar, and on the table was set an urn filled with burning incense. On both sides of the urn were 2 candle stands with huge, brightly lit candles. Leaning against the urn was a tablet made of gold, carved with the names of the thunder deities. Beneath the table were 5 huge cisterns full of clear water, and afloat with willow branches. To the branches was attached a thin sheet of iron inscribed with the charms used to summon the agents of the Thunder Bureau. 5 huge pillars were also set up around the table, and written on these pillars were the names of the barbarian thunder lords of 5 quarters. There were 2 Taoists standing on both sides of each pillar. Each of the Taoists held an iron bludgeon used for pounding on the pillar. There were also many Taoists drawing up documents behind the altar. Before them there were set up a brazier for burning papers and several statues, all representing the messengers of charms, the local spirits, and patron deities. The great immortal, without affecting the slightest degree of modesty, walked straight up to the altar and stood still. A young Taoist presented him with several charms written on yellow papers and a treasure sword. Holding the sword, the great immortal recited a spell, and then burnt a charm on the flame of a candle. Down below several Taoists picked up a document, and a statue holding a charm, and had these burned also. With a bang the old Taoist high above brought down his ritual tablet on the table, and at once a breeze could be felt in the air. Oh dear! Oh dear, muttered 8 Rules. This Taoist is certainly quite capable. He bangs his tablet once and indeed the wind's rising. Be quiet, brother, said Pilgrim. Don't speak to me any more. Just stand guard over master here, and let me do my business. Dear great sage. He pulled off a piece of hair and blew on it his immortal breath, saying, change. It changed at once into a spurious pilgrim, standing next to the Tang monk. His true body rose with his primal spirit into midair, where he shouted, who is in charge of the wind here? He so startled the old woman of the wind that she hugged her bag, while the second boy of the wind pulled tight the rope at the mouth of the bag. They stepped forward to salute Pilgrim, who said, I am accompanying the holy monk of the Tang court to go to acquire scriptures in the western heaven. We happen to pass through the Cart Slow Kingdom, and are now waging a rain-making contest with that deviant Taoist. How could you not help old monkey and assist that Taoist instead? I'll pardon you this time, but you'd better call in the wind. If there's just the tiniest breeze to make the whiskers of the Taoist flutter, each of you will receive 20 strokes of the iron rod. We dare not. We dare not, said the old woman of the wind, and so, there was no sign of any wind. Unable to contain himself, 8 Rules began to holler, You sir, please step down. You've banged aloud the tablet. How is it that there's no wind? You come down, and let us go up there. Holding high his tablet, the Taoist burned another charm before bringing down his tablet once more. Immediately, clouds and fog began to form in midair, but the great sage Sun shouted again, Who is spreading the clouds? He so startled the cloud-pushing boy and the fog-spreading lad that they hurriedly came forward to salute him. After Pilgrim had given his explanation as before, the cloud boy and the mist lad removed the clouds so that the sun came out and shone most brilliantly. The sky was cloudless for 10,000 miles. Laughing, 8 Rules said, This master may deceive the king and befool his subjects. But he hasn't any real abilities. Why, the tablet has sounded twice. Why is it that we don't see any clouds forming? Becoming rather agitated, the Taoist loosened his hair, picked up his sword, and recited another spell as he burned a charm. Once more he brought down his tablet with a bang, and immediately the heavenly Lord Deng arrived from the south heaven gate, trailed by the Squire of Thunder and the Mother of Lightning. When they saw Pilgrim in midair, they saluted him, and he gave his explanation as before. What powerful summons, he said, brought you all here so quickly? The heavenly Lord said, The proper magic of 5 thunder exercised by that Taoist was not faked. 2. He issued the summons and burned the document, which alerted the Jade Emperor. The Jade Emperor sent his decree to the residents of the primordial celestial worthy of all-pervading thunderclap in the ninefold heaven. We in turn received his command to come here and assist with the rainmaking by providing thunder and lightning. In that case, said Pilgrim, just wait a moment. You can help Old Monkey instead. There was, therefore, neither the sound of thunder nor the flash of lightning. In sheer desperation now, that Taoist added more incense, burned his charms, recited more spells, and struck his tablet more loudly than ever. In midair, the dragon kings of 4 oceans all arrived together, only to be met by Pilgrim, who shouted, Ao Guang, where do you think you're going? Ao Guang, Ao Shuan, Ao Qin, and Aowen all went forward to salute him, and Pilgrim gave his explanation as before. He thanked the dragon kings moreover, saying, I needed your help in times past, but we have not yet reached our goal. Today, I must rely on your assistance once more to help me achieve this merit right now. That Taoist has struck his tablet 4 times, and it's now Old Monkey's turn to do business. But I don't know how to burn charms, issue summons, or strike any tablet. So all of you must play along with me. The heavenly Lord Deng said, If the great sage gives us the order, who would dare disobey? You must, however, give us a sign, so that we may follow your instructions in an orderly manner. Otherwise, thunder and rain may be all mixed up, and that will not be to the credit of the great sage. Pilgrim said, I'll use my rod as the sign. Oh dear father, cried the Squire of Thunder, horrified. How could we take the rod? I'm not going to strike you, said Pilgrim. All I want from you is to watch the rod. If I point it upwards once, you'll make the wind blow. We'll make the wind blow, snapped the old woman of the wind and the second boy of the wind in unison. When the rod points upward a second time, you'll spread the clouds. We'll spread the clouds. We'll spread the clouds, cried the cloud-pushing boy and the mist-spreading lad. When I point the rod upwards for the 3rd time, I want thunder and lightning. We'll provide the service. We'll provide the service, said the Squire of Thunder and the Mother of Lightning. When I point the rod upwards the 4th time, I want rain. We obey. We obey, said the Dragon Kings. And when I point the rod upwards the 5th time, I want sunshine and fair weather. Don't make any mistake. After he had given all these instructions, Pilgrim dropped down from the clouds and retrieved his hair back to his body. Being of fleshly eyes and mortal stock, how could those people know the difference? Pilgrim then cried out with a loud voice, Sir, please stop. You have struck aloud the tablet 4 times, but there's not the slightest sign of wind, cloud, thunder, or rain. You should let me take over. The Taoist had no choice but to leave his place and come down the altar for Pilgrim to take his turn. Pouting, he went back to the tower to see the throne. "Let me follow him," said Pilgrim, "and see what he has to say." He arrived and heard the king asking the Taoist, "We have been listening here most eagerly for the sounds of your tablet. 4 times it struck and there was neither wind nor rain. Why is that?" The Taoist said, "Today the dragon deities are not home." Pilgrim shouted with a loud voice, "Your Majesty, the dragon deities are home all right, but the magic of your national preceptor is not efficacious enough to bring them here. Allow us priests to summon them here for you to see." "Ascend the altar at once," said the king, "and we shall wait for the rain here." Having received this decree, Pilgrim dashed back to the altar and tugged at the Tang monk, saying, "Master, please go up to the altar." "Disciple," said the Tang monk, "I don't know how to pray for rain." "He's trying to set you up," said 8 Rules, laughing. "If there's no rain, they'll put you on the pyre and finish you off with a fire." Pilgrim said, "Though you may not know how to pray for rain, you know how to recite scriptures. Let me help you." The elder indeed ascended the altar and solemnly took a seat on top. With complete concentration, he recited silently the Heart Sutra. Suddenly an official came galloping on a horse with the question, "Why are you monks not striking the tablet and burning charms?" Pilgrim answered in a loud voice, "No need for that. Ours is the quiet work of fervent prayers." The official left to give this reply to the king, and we shall mention him no further. When Pilgrim heard that his old master had finished reciting the sutra, he took out his rod from his ear, and one wave of it in the wind gave it a length of 12 feet, and the thickness of a rice bowl. He pointed it upwards in the air. When the old woman of the wind saw it, she immediately shook loose her bag as the second boy of the wind untied the rope around its mouth. The roar of the wind could be heard instantly, as tiles and bricks flew up all over the city, and stones and dust hurtled through the air. Just look at it. It was truly marvelous wind, not at all similar to any ordinary breeze. You saw snapped willows and cracked flowers, fallen trees and toppled woods, 9-layered halls with chipped and broken walls, a 5-phoenix tower of shaken pillars and beams, the red sun losing its brightness in heaven, the yellow sand taking wings on earth, alarmed warriors before the martial hall, frightened ministers in the letters bower, girls of 3 palaces with frowsy locks, beauties of 6 chambers with tousled hair, tassels dropped from gold caps of marquis and earls. The prime minister's black gauze did spread its wings. Attendants had words but they dared not speak. The yellow gate held papers that could not be sent. Goldfishes and jade belts stood not in rows. Ivory tablets and silk gowns had broken ranks. Colored rooms and turquoise screens were all damaged. Green windows and scarlet doors were all destroyed. Tiles of golden chimes hall flew off with bricks. Carved doors of brocade cloud hall all fell apart. This violent wind was violent indeed. It blew till king and subjects, fathers and sons, could not meet. Till all streets and markets were emptied of men, and doors of 10,000 homes were tightly shut. As this violent gust of wind arose, Pilgrim's son further revealed his magic power. Giving his golden hooped rod a twirl, he pointed it upwards a second time. You saw the cloud-pushing boy, the fog-spreading lad. The cloud-pushing boy revealed his godly power, and a murky mass dropped down from heaven. The fog-spreading lad displayed his magic might, and dense, soaring mists covered the earth. The 3 markets all grew dim. The 6 avenues all turned dark. With wind clouds left the seas, and Kunlun, trailing the rain. Soon they filled heaven and earth, and blackened this world of dust. 'Twas opaque like chaos of yore. None could see Phoenix Tower's door. As thick fog and dense clouds rolled in, Pilgrim's son gave his golden-hooped rod another twirl, and pointed it upwards a third time. You saw the Squire of Thunder raging, the Mother of Lightning irate. The Squire of Thunder, raging, rode a fiery beast backward to descend from heaven's pass. The Mother of Lightning, irate, wielded gold snakes madly as she left the Dipper Hall. Hulala cracked the thunder, shattering the Iron Fork Mountain. Shillelagh flashed the scarlet sheets, flying out of the eastern ocean. Loud rumbles of chariots came on and off. Like fires and flames the grains and rice shot up. Myriad things sprouted, their spirits revived. Countless insects were from dormancy aroused. 3. King and subjects both were terrified. Traders and merchants were awed by the sound. Ping ping, pang pang, the thunder flashed and roared so ferociously that it seemed as if mountains were toppling, and the earth was splitting apart. So terrified were the city's inhabitants that every house lighted incense, that every home burned paper money. Old Deng, shouted Pilgrim. Take care to look out for those greedy and corrupt officials, those churlish and disobedient sons. Strike down many of them for me to warn the public. The peal of thunder grew louder than ever. Finally, Pilgrim pointed the iron rod once more and you saw. The dragons gave order. And rain filled the world. Strong as heaven's river spilling o'er the dikes. Quick as the clouds rushing through a channel. It pattered on top of towers. It splashed outside the windows. The silver stream ran down from heaven. And whitecaps surged through the streets. It spurted like vases upturned. It gushed forth like basins poured out. With houses almost drowned in hamlets. The water rose to rural bridges' height. Truly mulberry fields became vast oceans. And billows all too soon raced through the land. Dragon gods came to lend a helping hand. By lifting up the Yangtze and throwing it down. The torrential rain began in the morning, and did not stop even after the noon hour. So great was the downpour that all the streets and gullies of the Kartslow kingdom were completely flooded. The king therefore issued this decree, the rain's enough. If we had any more, it might damage the crops, and that would have made things worse. An official messenger below the 5 Phoenix Tower at once galloped through the rain to make this announcement, Holy monk, we have enough rain. When Pilgrim heard this, he pointed the golden-hooped rod upwards once more and, instantly, the thunder stopped, and the wind subsided, the rain ended, and the clouds dispersed. The king was filled with delight, and not one of the various civil and military officials could refrain from marveling, saying, Marvelous priest. This is truly that for the strong, there's someone stronger still. Even when our preceptors of state were capable of making the rain, a fine drizzle would go on for virtually half a day before it stopped completely. How is it that the weather can turn fair the moment the priest wants it to be fair? Look, the sun comes out instantly, and there is not a speck of cloud anywhere. The king gave the command for the carriage to be returned to the palace, for he wanted to certify the travel rescript and permit the Tang monk to pass through. Just as he was about to use his treasure seal, the 3 Taoists all went forward and stopped him, saying, Your Majesty, this downpour of rain cannot be regarded as the monk's merit, for it still owes its origin to the strength of the Taoist gate. The king said, You just claimed that the dragon kings were not home, and that was why it didn't rain. He walked up there, exercised his quiet work of fervent prayers, and rain came down at once. How could you strive with him for credit? The tiger strength immortal said, I issued my summons, burned my charms, and struck my tablets several times after I ascended the altar. Which dragon king would dare not show up? It had to be that someone else somewhere was also requesting their service, and that was the reason that the dragon kings along with the officers of the other 4 bureaus, of wind, cloud, thunder, and lightning, did not appear at first. Once they heard my summons, however, they were in a hurry to get here, and by that time it happened that I was leaving the altar already. The priest, of course, made use of the opportunity, and it rained. But if you thought about the matter from the beginning, the dragons were those which I summoned here, and the rain was that which we called for. How could you regard this, therefore, as their meritorious fruit? When that dim-witted king heard these words, he became all confused again. Pilgrim walked one step forward, and pressing his palms together he said, "Your Majesty, this trivial magic of heterodoxy is hardly to be considered anything of consequence. Let's not worry about whether it's his merit or ours. Let me tell you instead that there are in midair right now the dragon kings of the 4 oceans, because I have not dismissed them, they dare not withdraw. If that preceptor of state could order the dragon kings to reveal themselves, I would concede that this was his merit." Very pleased, the king said, "We have been on the throne for 23 years, but we have never laid eyes on a living dragon. Both of you can exercise your magic power, regardless whether you are a monk or a Taoist. If you could ask them to reveal themselves, it would be your merit. If you couldn't, it would be your fault." Those Taoists, of course, had no such power or authority. Even if they were to give the order, the dragon kings would never dare show themselves on account of the presence of the great sage. Thus, the Taoists said, "We can't do this. Why don't you try?" Lifting his face toward the air, the great sage cried out in a loud voice, "Ao Guang, where are you? All of you brothers, show your true selves." When those dragon kings heard this call, they at once revealed their original forms, for dragons dancing through clouds and mists toward the hall of golden chimes. You see them soaring and transforming, encircling clouds and mists. Like white hooks the jade claws hang. Like bright mirrors the silver scales shine. Whiskers float like white silk, each strand's distinct. Horns rise ruggedly, each prong is clear. Those craggy foreheads. Those brilliant round eyes. They hidden or seen, can't be fathomed. They flying or soaring, can't be described. Pray for rain, and rain comes instantly. Ask for fair sky, and it's here at once. Only these are the true dragon forms, most potent and holy. Their good aura surrounds the court profusely. The king lighted incense in the hall, and the various officials bowed down before the steps. "It was most kind of you to show us your precious forms," said the king. "Please go back, and we shall say a special mass another day to thank you." "All of you deities may now retire," said Pilgrim, "for the king has promised to thank you with a special mass on another day." The dragon kings returned to the oceans, while the other deities all went back to heaven. Thus this is the true magic might, so boundless and vast. Heresies pierced by nature enlightened. We don't know how the deviant is finally exorcised. Let's listen to the explanation in the next chapter. You are listening to PastThink.com audiobook. Please like and subscribe, thank you.